You need to learn your place, Felicity. What are you? No, stop. Dad said a wife needs to respect her husband. Maybe this will teach you. Crack. Oh my God, you broke her nose. What have you done? My fiancé broke my nose at Thanksgiving dinner to prove to his father I knew my place. Hi, I'm Felicity. Today, I'm going to tell you my story. But before I continue, please share and subscribe to hear more stories like this. I met Dalton 3 years ago at a corporate mixer. He was charming, successful, and attentive in all the right ways. He worked in commercial real estate, drove a nice car, and always picked up the check. My friends called him a catch. My mother adored him. When he proposed after 18 months, I thought I'd won the lottery. The red flags started small, little comments about my clothes being too revealing when they weren't. Suggestions that I should check in more often when I went out with friends. He'd get quiet and moody if I disagreed with him in front of others, then later explain he just wanted us to present a united front. I rationalized everything. He's just protective, I told myself. He cares about me. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment things shifted. We were at dinner with his colleagues, and I mentioned a successful campaign I'd led at work. Dalton laughed it off, saying I was being modest, that my team had really done the heavy lifting. His colleague looked confused because I'd just explained my role in detail. Later in the car, Dalton said I'd embarrassed him by bragging. I wasn't bragging, I was answering his question about my work. You made it sound like you're more successful than me. I never said that, I just talked about my project. Well, it made me look bad. Just be more aware next time. That became the pattern. Anything that made me shine somehow diminished him. My accomplishments were threats. My confidence was arrogance. My independence was disrespect. My best friend Margot saw through it immediately. Felicity, he's controlling you, she said over coffee one Saturday morning, 6 months before the wedding. He's not controlling me. He just has opinions. He has opinions about your haircut, your job, your friends, and what time you should be home. That's not opinions, that's control. I laughed it off. You're being dramatic. Am I? When's the last time you made a decision without wondering what Dalton would think about it first? I didn't have an answer for that. The truth was I'd started editing myself constantly, choosing outfits he'd approve of, declining invitations I knew would irritate him, downplaying my work achievements to avoid his sulking. I'd become smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the space he allowed me. Things escalated after I met his father, Preston. Preston was old money, the kind of man who believed women should be decorative and deferential. He made comments about my career in marketing being cute, and asked Dalton when I'd be quitting to focus on homemaking. Dalton never corrected him. In fact, he seemed to preen under his father's approval. Your dad's kind of intense, I mentioned on the drive home from that first dinner. He's traditional, there's nothing wrong with that. He basically said I should quit my job. Would that be so terrible? I make enough for both of us. I like my job, Dalton. I worked hard to build my career. His jaw tightened. We'll discuss this later. That phrase became his weapon of choice. We'll discuss this later meant you'll do what I want and we won't talk about it again. The engagement stretched on. Dalton kept pushing the wedding date back, saying he wanted everything perfect. Meanwhile, he started making more demands. He didn't like my coworker Bryce, so I shouldn't have lunch with him anymore. He thought my skirts were too short for the office. He needed to approve any purchases over $50 because we're building a life together. I started documenting everything in a journal, not because I thought I'd need it, but because I needed to see if I was going crazy. Reading back through my own words, I saw the pattern Margot had warned me about. But I was in too deep. The wedding invitations were ordered. The deposits were paid. My mother had already bought her dress. My mother. That was another complication. She loved Dalton, thought he was perfect. When I tried to express concerns, she'd say I was getting cold feet. Every bride worries, she'd assure me. Marriage is about compromise. But the compromise only went one direction, mine. Then came Thanksgiving. Dalton insisted we spend it with his family at Preston's estate in Connecticut. My family Thanksgiving was always chaotic and warm, with too much food and my nephew running around. Preston's house was different. Everything was formal, cold, perfectly arranged. His wife Cordelia barely spoke except to comment on the table settings. Dalton's younger sister Therese seemed nervous and jumpy, flinching whenever Preston raised his voice. I should have paid more attention to that. Therese was 24 and still acted like a frightened teenager around her father. That should have told me everything. Preston held court at the head of the table, pontificating about business, politics, and the declining state of modern society. Women today don't understand their value, he announced over the turkey. They chase careers and forget their purpose. A woman's power is in the home, supporting her husband. I bit my tongue. Cordelia nodded along. Therese studied her plate intently. Felicity works in marketing, Dalton said, his tone almost apologetic. For now, Preston said, looking at me with cold eyes. I'm sure she'll see reason once you're married. A man can't build an empire if his wife is distracted by a hobby. It's not a hobby, it's my career, I said evenly. The room went silent. Preston's face darkened. Dalton's hand clamped down on my thigh under the table, hard enough to bruise. Excuse me? Preston said. I said it's my career. I went to school for it. I'm good at it. I have no intention of quitting. Dalton, you haven't trained her properly yet. Trained, like I was a dog. Dad, we've discussed this, Dalton started. Have you? Because it sounds like your fiancé doesn't respect your authority. How do you expect to manage a wife if you can't even manage a girlfriend? Dalton's face flushed red. Felicity, apologize to my father. For what? Having a career? For being disrespectful in his home? I wasn't disrespectful. I stated a fact. Preston stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. This is what happens when you're too soft on them? They forget their place. My father taught me early. You establish dominance, or they'll walk all over you. I'm not walking all over anyone, I said, my voice rising. I'm a person, not property. Dalton grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in. We're going outside, now. He dragged me through the dining room into the foyer. Preston followed, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. Therese's eyes were wide with fear. Cordelia sat frozen, her wine glass halfway to her lips. You need to learn your place, Felicity. What are you? No, stop. Dad said a wife needs to respect her husband. Maybe this will teach you. He pulled back his fist and punched me straight in the face. The pain was blinding, white-hot and all-consuming. I heard the crack, felt the blood pour down my face, hot and sticky. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall, my legs giving out. Oh my God, you broke her nose! What have you done? Cordelia's voice, shrill with panic. I slid down the wall, cupping my face, blood everywhere. It was pouring between my fingers, dripping onto my dress, pooling on Preston's pristine marble floor. The room spun. Through my tears and the blood, I saw Preston nodding approvingly at Dalton. That's how you handle defiance, Preston said calmly, as if Dalton had just closed a successful business deal. Therese appeared beside me with a towel, her hands shaking. We need to call an ambulance. No ambulance, Preston ordered. This is a family matter. She needs a hospital, Therese shouted, her voice breaking. Keep your voice down, Therese. You're being hysterical. I grabbed my purse with shaking, bloody hands and ran. Blood streamed down my face, my vision blurred. I made it to my car and locked the doors. Dalton pounded on the window, shouting apologies mixed with accusations. You provoked me. You embarrassed me in front of my father. If you just apologized like I asked. I drove straight to the hospital, my hands trembling on the wheel, blood soaking the towel Therese had given me. The ER doctor took one look at me and called the police. I told them everything. They photographed my injuries from every angle, took my statement, and informed me they were issuing an arrest warrant for Dalton. My broken nose required surgery. My face was a mess of bruises, purple and black spreading across my cheeks, my eyes swollen nearly shut. Margot picked me up from the hospital. I should have listened to you, I said through the pain medication haze. You're listening now. That's what matters. I stayed with Margot while I recovered. Dalton called 50 times a day. He texted, emailed, sent flowers with notes begging forgiveness. I love you, Felicity. I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. Please, we can work through this. Don't throw away what we have. I blocked him on everything. His mother Cordelia actually called to ask if I'd consider working things out because marriages require sacrifice and he's under so much stress. He broke my nose, I said flatly. I know, dear, but he's very sorry. Boys sometimes don't know their own strength. I hung up on her. Pressing charges was easy. Dalton hired an expensive lawyer who tried every trick, claiming I'd provoked him, that I'd been disrespectful to his family, that it was a momentary lapse in judgment. The prosecutor showed the jury my broken face. The photos were damning. My testimony was clear and consistent. The hospital records documented everything. He was convicted of assault and sentenced to 2 years, though he'd likely serve less with good behavior. But that was just the beginning of his downfall. The arrest made the news. Local papers ran the story. Real estate executive arrested for domestic violence. His company immediately suspended him, then quietly let him go. His clients started pulling their contracts. Nobody wanted to work with a man who'd broken his fiancé's nose over dinner conversation. His professional reputation, the thing he'd valued above everything, was destroyed overnight. I sued him civilly for medical expenses, pain and suffering, and emotional distress. My lawyer was ruthless, presenting evidence of his pattern of control and abuse leading up to the assault. We won a substantial settlement, nearly $300,000. Dalton had to liquidate assets to pay me. His fancy car, his investment portfolio, the condo he was so proud of showing off, all of it went to covering what he owed me. But the real karma came from an unexpected source. Therese reached out to me 3 weeks after the incident. I need to tell you something, she said over coffee, her voice barely above a whisper. You're not the first. What? Dalton's first girlfriend in college. Dad paid her to go away and sign an NDA. She was going to press charges too. Dad gave her $50,000 to disappear. Your father covered it up. He's been covering for Dalton his whole life. Every time he gets violent, every time he gets in trouble, Dad makes it go away with money. But seeing what he did to you, how you actually fought back instead of taking the money, it made me realize I don't have to protect them anymore. Therese gave me the name of Dalton's ex-girlfriend. I found her on social media and reached out. Her name was Simone, and she'd been carrying the guilt of taking that money for 7 years. I needed it for my student loans, she cried over the phone. I told myself it was just one punch, that I'd overreacted. But I let him get away with it, and now he did it to you. I should have pressed charges. I should have stood up. You were a victim too. You did what you needed to survive, but maybe together we can make sure he never does this to anyone else. Simone broke her NDA. My lawyer argued that NDAs covering criminal acts were unenforceable anyway. We went to the media with both stories, showing a pattern of violence and wealthy cover-ups. The story exploded. National news picked it up. Suddenly Preston's name, his company, his reputation, all of it was under scrutiny. Preston's business partners started asking uncomfortable questions. How many other incidents had he buried? What else was he hiding? A full investigation revealed years of Preston using company funds to pay off his son's victims and cover up problems. The board forced him into retirement with no golden parachute. His reputation, the thing he valued most, was destroyed. Cordelia filed for divorce immediately after the investigation started. Turns out she'd had enough too. 30 years of looking the other way, of making excuses, of staying silent. With Preston's assets frozen pending investigation, she took what she could and moved to Florida. She sent me a card months later. Thank you for being braver than I was. Dalton's real estate license was revoked. His conviction made him virtually unemployable in any professional field. Last I heard, he was working retail at an electronics store and living in a studio apartment on the edge of town, paying off his debts to me monthly. His father won't speak to him. Preston blames Dalton for being stupid enough to get caught, for exposing the family secrets and destroying his legacy. The cherry on top? Dalton's company fired him and sued him for breach of contract and damage to their reputation. They argued his criminal conviction violated his employment agreement. That lawsuit is still ongoing, but his lawyer bills are astronomical. He'll be paying for his actions for years, decades probably. I'm doing better than ever. My career flourished after I left Dalton. It turns out I'm much more successful when I'm not constantly second-guessing myself or making myself smaller. I got promoted twice in 18 months. I moved into a beautiful apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. I started therapy to work through the trauma, and it's helping me rebuild my sense of self. Margot and I are closer than ever. She keeps threatening to screen any future dates, and honestly, I might let her do it. She's earned that right. The broken nose healed. The surgeon did a good job. You can barely tell it was broken unless you know what to look for. I see it as a reminder that I'm stronger than I thought, that I don't have to accept mistreatment, that fighting back, even when it's scary, is worth it. Simone and I became friends. We both speak at domestic violence awareness events now, sharing our stories to help other women recognize the warning signs we missed. We've heard from dozens of women who said our story gave them the courage to leave their own abusive situations. That makes everything worth it. Preston's empire crumbled piece by piece. The investigations revealed decades of corruption, payoffs, and ethical violations. He's facing multiple lawsuits from former business partners and employees. His legacy is ruined. The family name he was so proud of is now synonymous with abuse and cover-ups. Therese completely cut ties with her father and brother. She's in therapy too, working through her own trauma from growing up in that house, watching her father bully her mother and brother, turn into a younger version of Preston. She tells me she should have stood up to them years ago, but I remind her that she did stand up. She chose truth over family loyalty, and that took real courage. I never got Dalton's apologies. Not real ones anyway, just excuses and justifications. And I didn't want them. An apology can't unbreak my nose. It can't give me back the months I spent doubting myself, shrinking myself, trying to be acceptable to someone who would never accept me as I was. It can't erase the fear I felt in that foyer. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. The best revenge wasn't anything I planned. It was watching the natural consequences of their own choices destroy them. Preston's arrogance and corruption caught up with him. Dalton's violence cost him everything he cared about. They built their own trap through years of entitlement and abuse, and they walked right into it. I didn't need to forgive them to move on. I just needed to stand up, press charges, and let the truth speak for itself. The justice system, the media, and their own actions did the rest. Sometimes I think about that Thanksgiving dinner. How different my life would be if I just stayed quiet, apologized to Preston, and accepted my place. I'd be married to a man who thought hitting me was acceptable. I'd be part of a family that thought abuse was discipline. I'd be small and silent and miserable. Instead, I'm free. I'm successful. I'm happy. And they're all paying the price for thinking they could treat people like property. My mother eventually came around. It took her seeing the photos of my face, hearing the full story, understanding the pattern of control. She apologized for pushing me toward the wedding, for dismissing my concerns. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly. She accompanies me sometimes when I speak at awareness events. She tells other mothers to listen when their daughters express concerns about their partners. If your partner ever made you feel like you needed to know your place, what was the final moment that made you realize you deserved better?